was. All right, so a little backstory here. FEZ is a video game. It came out in April of some year that was awesome. Thank you, 2012. The important thing that I'm going to talk about FEZ is I could do some little lecture on how FEZ is really about changing gaming and bloody bloopty blop and fuck Phil Fish. I don't want to have that conversation, but actually it could be kind of fun. We'll see where it goes. But I want to talk about our personal experiences with FEZ and what it feels like when you play it. And then I'm going to go way into the deep end. So I hear a 5 out of 10 and 9. There's a 9 in here, right? You're the 9. You were 7? So we're going to maybe go to 12. Awesome. Good. And so we can do this from a few angles. So Ethan here is a developer who helped port FEZ to other platforms like Linux and Mac out of the PC original build for XNA, or Mono Game, sorry. So we actually have two really interesting perspectives. Me from the crazy lunatic who played FEZ, and it's hi internet. The lunatic who played FEZ and got some spiritual revelation out of it, and then the technical side, which I'm also very keen to because I'm a developer myself. So let's do it. FEZ, more than a game, right? You like that? Okay. So I like to start with mother. I like to say fucking. And then you could just look at a bunch of pictures and have a brainwave and go motherfucking FEZ, right? So let's talk about what FEZ is from a concept, right? You play FEZ, and the immediate subject matter of the entire game is perspective, right? And you go through FEZ and you think, okay, I'm playing a game, and my challenge here is dimensional. I have to just understand a concept and build on it. Did anybody play Myst or Riven? Any of those awesome games? I like that, What was that? Nice. FEZ is like Myst in a way that if Myst were supposed to have been, for me, if Myst were spiritual in a way, I think you would have gotten FEZ. And I think that's where Phil Fish gets his frustration. Phil Fish is coming from an angle where here's a dude who just made a game that was really passive. You don't fight anything in FEZ, at least unless I missed something important. And there's really only one tense section of that game, well maybe two, where you're racing against the clock or there's some pressure. Other than that, you're really just solving puzzles and trying to connect dots. And that's what I really like about FEZ. It's a different experience. It doesn't fit our paradigm of gaming at all. And so Phil Fish comes and he makes this game, and he actually makes 2 games, but then he maybe makes 3 games, but then who knows really how many games he made in FEZ. And depending on, I guess, what side of the scale of 1 to 10 you are, you've come to realize this, or maybe you haven't. I guess I'm gonna have to spoil some shit. Is everyone okay if I spoil some shit? Okay. So you play FEZ, and as everybody knows, you're a little dude in a 2D atmosphere, and you can change the perspective. And that, of course, the thing that's way far over there is actually right here, and when you look at a different orthographic projection in a different rotation, I can just hop over the ledge that otherwise is very far apart. And this concept goes through every mechanic of the game in terms of moving platforms, in terms of dungeon crawling a little bit, even into some weirdness with dimensions and perspective, right? Do you guys remember the Tetris room where you're going down and you're just falling over and over again? You lose your sense of direction. You guys remember how the game is soaked in mystery. You feel that when you play FEZ? There's something there it's trying to poke you. And what I like about FEZ is you play FEZ and you're Alice in Wonderland, right? You're going down the rabbit hole. And there's something about it that compels you to keep going down the rabbit hole. And I don't know about you guys, but when I wanted to play FEZ, I don't know what I was looking for. I was just hungry the entire time. Do you feel that? Because you were the original, getting into the forums and stuff. Did anybody else feel that way about FEZ? Yeah. Yeah, I want you guys to reflect on something he just said. He said that when you're playing FEZ, they're telling you everything the whole time, but the only action point that changes at the game when you go from what we would call 100% to 200%, because FEZ is 2 games, there's some realization that I've been feeling something is there. I feel like this game is more than this platformer with some perspective problems, but you don't know what it is. And the game, you're right, the entire time there is language. There's language in the art. There's language in the music. There's literal language in the music, if you look behind me. Things that are there that are being fed to you that it requires you to take your perspective. Like first you get challenged. You're like, how do you go from 2D to 3D without seeing 3D, right? And then it peels it apart. So how many people beat the game and got 32 cubes, right? That's like the thing. Right, to get to the first time you complete the hexahedron. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? Do I need to I can go back a few more steps. Yeah? Yeah, okay, let's do a little recap, especially for the internet ramblers. So, FEZ is a game where you're collecting what they call little cube bits, and the hexahedron is like the master computer, the matrix, right? And it breaks and shatters into, quote, maybe 64 different little cube pieces. And your goal as FEZ is to reconstruct those pieces and return the hexahedron to normal. When you play the game, it's basically trying to lead you on this idea that 32 cubes is all you're going to get. And you get your 32 cubes, and you're like, oh yeah, I beat the game. You get a nice ending, you get a nice fanfare, but then you reboot. You literally reboot in the ending. And you wake up in your bed again as a new game plus. And that's interesting. First of all, because it's an awesome fucking reference. But second of all, because you were literally being reborn into life. But this time, you've got everything that you had when you finished it before, plus something special. And the something special is that now this time when you play the game, instead of being forced into a 2D perspective of a 3D environment, you get to put on the fucking cool shades, right? Deal with it.
It actually is referred to as deal with it. I can confirm that.
Yeah, and at that point in the game, sorry, I'm scrolling through like a madness of notes, and I'll get into that. You can start looking in 3D perspectives. So if you see, like, this is stuff, you normally play FEZ and you see this kind of experience. But every once in a while, you can actually peel in 3D and see some of the underlying environment, which is really neat. And so you can see I've just kind of like rambled on in the back taking notes and stuff. And there's shit that you wouldn't have known was there. So what you're seeing here is in the very beginning of the game, you start in this nice town and there's a tower and you're like, ah, cool, whatever, that's awesome. Look at this, we're gonna play a video game. The second time you play it, if you choose to be adventurous, you can put on the shades and you can start looking at the floor and the ceilings. And you can also start seeing how the geometry is really built. And you'll start to see things like this. And this doesn't look like much, but the game really does a good job of showing you these tetramino codes. Are you all familiar with the tetramino codes in the game? Essentially, if you look here, the game is trying to tell you, it's just like Myst. Literally, if you played Myst, there was a language and a number system you had to learn to finish the game, and that's what FEZ has done. The little pictures of the Tetris blocks that you'll see, those are called tetraminos. They all correspond to different buttons on your controller. Has everybody in the room figured that out yet, or is that news? That's good news. Okay. And then in the small corner, you're seeing a number. And basically in this room, you have to turn your perspective all the way around before you can see every number. In addition, there's no way that you can see some numbers because you have to go into a three-dimensional view in order to get the angle that you would need to see it. And I don't know if I have an exact screenshot of that because I didn't really give.
It's because it's behind the boiler.
Yeah, so one of these is just behind one of the pipes in the room, and you can't see it unless you do that.
That one.
Yeah. Okay, so there's something else in this room that's really fucking awesome, and it's that poster right there that looks like, I don't know. Is anybody here like really abstract, like an artist? Do we have any artists? Okay. What is that big poster? I just want to know what you think it is.
I always thought about like the whole game.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if that's what you're going for there. I'm not sure what you're trying to say that looks like.
I'm not trying to say it looks like anything. I'm just trying to figure it out with you guys. Yeah, I see that.
The big vertical one?
Yeah, the big vertical poster.
I don't see like any specific artist reference out of that poster.
Nice. What about if you remove the reference to artists, I guess, do you see any just use your artist brain, I guess, and just like, what does it look like? It's the top half of a person. Head, arms, waist, penis? Little penis?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I guess that logic breaks down there.
I like, ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. That's awesome. Okay.
Being said, it does, if you do turn it around, it kind of looks like you get
Yeah, I see them.
Yeah. And this is one of the first streams you access. You get the
Yep. So I'm gonna scroll down to this image. When I played FEZ, we were really amped up because nobody knew what the fuck this game was about, and people were going real deep, and to the point where there's basically on GameFAQs there's probably like a forum thread that's at least 80 pages long about this. On Reddit, there's a whole fucking shitstorm of like commentary and delusional thoughts from abstract motherfuckers about what FEZ really is, myself included, obviously. And you start to see, so FEZ not only has a numbering system like I referred to, but it also has a lettering system. In FEZ, I wonder if I can just pull up some things on the internet here. There's something called a tome. Are you guys familiar with this artifact in the game? Anybody familiar with this? One? Somebody said there were 7 out of 10. All right. Okay. I'm sorry. I got you for
This
press
is
the
where
game.
the number becomes
Yeah.
very much subjective.
Okay, so in the game, through a lot of effort, you can learn the language that's inside of this game, and you can learn the alphabet. Anybody play Commander Keen? Does anybody remember that game?
One of my QA guys, actually, the Steam versions of Commander
Oh, that's awesome.
he actually maintains them.
Yeah. So Commander Keen has the intergalactic alphabet in it, and it's just like hilariously in there, but you never really know what it is. It's just letters on the wall, and you're like, oh, it means exit, I guess. But you can actually take it and expand it and like kind of translate the whole game. Hey, man, we've got some Steam notification.
That's what it
Goodbye.
is known for.
Indeed.
Just have space to do that.
Yeah, and so the intergalactic alphabet then gets used in like a million other games randomly. So if you, yeah, it's in fucking Minecraft, and it's kind of like one of the ways you have to solve the ending of Minecraft if you don't use like the internet. So the tome. Let's talk about the fucking tome. First of all, this is what I lived in for a long time. Just notes. I have probably wasted like 4 notepads doing this kind of thing. Not nearly as legible though. Kind of jealous. Anyway, in the game, you get these artifacts, and I'm going to open another image here. Let's do FEZ artifacts. That seems simple, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can show you the FEZ artifacts in 2D things, but here you go. So in the game, when you're exploring, you're going to come across these 4 items. One looks like a skull, one looks like a book, and the other just look like cubes with gibberish. Well, it turns out, taking much from its influence of Myst, that you've actually picked up a learning tool in the game. There's an alphabet cube, and there's a number cube. And basically, the way they work it into the mythology is, okay, you go through time in FEZ, right? Does everybody remember how you were going through the ages, and you're seeing your predecessors, and then you're seeing the modern age with the neon lights, and then you see the future age, very Chrono Trigger almost for me. And then you see Oblivion, pretty much. So you will find these cubes, and they work it in saying, like, okay, in time, in the past, this is how we taught, because there's a schoolroom. If you see one of these, this guy's a schoolroom. Perfect. So you pick up these artifacts, and you can actually then take it and use the classroom and know the language of FEZ. And this gets really interesting because FEZ is littered with text on different things. Like it's in the geometry, it's written on the walls. Just looking at this, you can kind of get a glimpse at how important it's going to be for you to learn the number system and the alphabet in the game. I could talk about that, but I feel like it would take away if you were going to play this game from what FEZ really is.
How long did it take?
4 years, at least.
No, it was 2007 to 2012. 2007 is the IGF date for art.
Let's see, man. 5 years.
5 years?
5 fucking years.
Here you go.
There you go.
I wasn't kidding. I was just giving you the numbers with which you could approximate.
Definitely.
As someone who's worked on his game, you've never seen his notes with like, oh, this is what I meant when
I've
He's
not-
worked on the game.
Like, I've not. The most I've seen is basically the assets and the source. So like, I can see where it goes, and I can see sort of the raw versions of what they might have written things as. Like, if you think about a cube, for example, technically that's just on 2D space. So sometimes that could matter, sometimes it couldn't, and assuming anything.
comments in the source code.
Yeah, but what does the source code tell you about this motherfucking thing?
Yeah, it really. I mean,
What is this?
It's basically just like some textures, and if you really wanted to unwrap them, you could. Like I used to be interested in doing like the art for games and then the music for games, which is why I ended up with MAGClassic, because that's where I was always listed at home. But of course, there's things like this where I'm missing, and I can just be an engineer because
So source code won't tell you anything about this motherfucking thing.
Nope.
So how many people got to the last 3 puzzles in FEZ? And if I say last 3 puzzles, I hope you know what I'm referring to.
Depending on. Oh yeah, three.
I got to the only thing I couldn't solve was the frog.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in the game, I'm gonna go a few steps back again. I'm gonna go back to the tome. You have to learn the language, and there are a few puzzles, and to get to 200% that you would have to learn in order to get the 64 cubes and get the quote-unquote good ending. And even if I pull this image up, I'm not looking at something that's even English. Like, this person took the characters in the tome, the book that you get, you can flip through the pages, and replaced all the FEZ letters with Roman Latin letters. Okay, that's a step. But even still, what the fuck is this? I'll tell you what it is. This is 3-dimensionally encoded. What you have to do is use music knowledge. You have to know about the circle of fifths. And then what you'll do is you'll read, I'm not going to be able to even fucking do it. But basically, you have to read the first letter on the first page, then move to the 5th page and read the first letter, and then you kind of alternate in terms of, like, to read a sentence, you've looked at every single page at least once, and you've gone through it in the circle of fifths order. And you come up with this really, really abstract poem. And I actually have this poster, I love it. From out of nowhere, impossible visitors are benefactors, watching over us in the hidden folds of fucking space, in front of behind, it's very FEZ, give the golden gift, a deep revelation, our eyes wide open. So I'm going to stop there for now and just kind of think, like, so we've been playing a game that's all about play the game. Okay, there's more to this game. And the entire time you're doing it, you feel like there's probably more, but what the fuck is it? And you get so deep, you get to this book, and if you have the patience or the interest, which is probably like the 1% of FEZ players, you're going to figure this out and you're going to read it. But what the fuck does it mean? FEZ is so cohesive because the whole gameplay idea is expanding your perspective. It's opening your mind to a reality that's right in front of you, but you just didn't have the ability to see it. And FEZ literally opens your mind's eye. It's not some big, like, crazy thing in your real life, but you watch it happen in a game atmosphere, which is really cool. You actually get to see how important it is to take a perspective that you had and maybe you were so ingrained with and pull out. And that's exactly what this is all about. It's saying there is a golden gift that we'll give you. Your eyes will be forced open by this deep revelation. And, like, it's so deep, what the fuck? So he goes on, it goes, shapes to tessellate with sacred geometry, an empire to build, a new perspective, things unseen but always there, a new direction. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. He is trying to say, when you play this game, the goal of FEZ is not to play a game and win it. The goal of FEZ is to have you as a player have an experience that requires you to reanalyze and repurpose in your mind what you're doing here. You play FEZ, and who knows why you picked up FEZ? Does anybody know why they ended up with FEZ? A humble bundle, maybe? A Steam sale? Like,
$89.
I just saw the game, and I was like, ooh, puzzle game.
Had to have it.
That looks unique.
yeah, exactly. That was definitely it for me. And that, and then combined with the music, and I was a fucking addict. But it goes on. The hexahedron, the 64-bit name of God, the point of origin. This is where it gets interesting. A pattern, a code, a deep understanding, a gate to the stars. And then lastly, all of time and space, and the space outside of space, where does it end? And the last 3 verses here are referring to 3 puzzles in the game that you will find if you beat the game once, and then you beat the game twice, and then for some stupid reason, you still have an itch to explore this 3-dimensional world. And it's not a stupid itch, it's intentional. Everything you've done playing this game, looking at the different dimensions, and kind of uncovering this new world, like, even if you play the whole game, you can beat it without really ever having to understand what that skull is or what that chart is over there on the left. Nobody still knows what the fuck the point of that is. And there's a lot of reason to think there is a point. So you get these last 3 verses, and they refer to 3 puzzles, one of which is the security code. So this is trying to test that you understand the language. And the question it's asking is pretty meta. There's 2 questions, actually. One is, the first half of it is Mini, and the other half made the game. And the answer is Metatron. And it's referring to the other half of Polytron, obviously, being the developer, publisher. And the first half is trying to say this game is, it's what this game is about, is the first question for the first half, the first 4 letters, meta. And going right back to opening your mind and trying to see things in a new perspective, that is literally what the word meta means. It's trying to say, like, you need to take a concept and think outside of it. Okay. I'm going to ask an interesting question now. I'm going to kind of pivot, because this is where FEZ for me goes from being a video game and experience about perspective and understanding to something that is fundamentally more than a game. Is there anybody here that's familiar with like spirituality, Gnosticism, like the kind of ancient Egyptian religions, or Masonic shit, any of that kind of like mythology? Nice. So just taking the imagery of the FEZ, like that's an immediate reference almost to like Masonic or like Hasidic Jew references, and kind of getting into that. Something wonderful happened a few months after FEZ was released. The storyboard here is that we all beat the game to 100%. We quickly beat it to 200%, and then the community together had to solve the last 3 puzzles. We found a room after you get all the cubes where there's an unfinished thing, and there's a secret indicator, and it's this room right here. And at the top of it, you're going to build a heart by solving those 3 challenging puzzles. And you see things like this. So FEZ is encoded with this meta puzzle of, I think the real puzzle is what is FEZ, right? But ultimately, you've got these 3 cubes you have to build to make a heart. And I can Google for a thing real quick and show you. And I use love because it's the name of the soundtrack piece. So you come in this motherfucking room, and you've got the outline of the shape, but you don't know how to make it. And it's like FEZ is really heavy on the old references. You know that there's something here. It's a room you just got to, and it's unfinished. And it starts like this, perfect. So there's, again, 3 puzzles. And who remembers this guy? Yeah, so this is the security puzzle, or yeah, the security thing. I was just talking about with the Metatron.
Okay, it's the thing that lights up.
Yeah, so you finally get to this room, if you do enough exploring, where you're asked a question in FEZ-ish, and you have to solve it. And I told you what the answer was. And you get this cube piece, and you're like, oh, awesome! And if we go back to the tome, if I still have it, and I don't need to do a Chromecast right now, we're talking about the 64-bit name of God. And what that means is we're talking about Metatron. And Metatron is actually a reference to something very ancient, something that appears in a lot of different religions. And sacred geometry, which is referenced in there, is a huge fucking part of it. Is anybody familiar with sacred geometry?
But Metatron can represent a single 64-bit number.
Yes, absolutely, it can. Yeah, totally. That's a good call there. And I'll talk about that in a second, too.
I'm actually going to admit to something funny. I started looking up the sacred geometry after your song.
That's really awesome. I got into your head. I'll talk about that too. So when we talk about the Metatron, I guess I'm not really like, I don't want to be the guy to talk about this, but if you take a bunch of circles and you just put them together and they're all unit, you remember geometry, you studied like unit radius. You're drawing circles that are all the same size, and you're putting them right next together so they only touch at the infinitely small point that the circles can. And you get these really cool shapes, and they come out, and you get tetrahedrons, hexahedrons, octahedrons. These are all platonic solids. And what's really crazy about the circles is they represent 2D orthographic projections of these shapes. And that's just something neat that happens in math, and it's kind of like part of our universe, regardless of if we put a label or some symbology on it. But FEZ is just littered to references of sacred geometry and Metatron and all this. So he's really trying to say, maybe he's like encoding some spiritual message inside of FEZ. Who knows? I do feel like I know what he's trying to say ultimately, but I'll get through that in a minute. So then we get to the next one, a pattern, a code, a deep understanding, a gate to the stars. There is a puzzle where you go to a telescope and you solve it and you get a cube, and it's really easy, and you're like, it was fun. But there's still more to that. There's literally 2 flashing stars that are beeping in a binary pattern that if you take them and you turn them into ASCII by taking the decimal to hexadecimal and then representing the ASCII values, you get LT, LT, RT, RT, like a combination of LT and RT, which are the trigger buttons. And then you push them in that order, and you get one of those crazy love cubes, the red cubes. Now here's the most ironic part, which is kind of unfortunate for them, but also kind of miraculous. The code that it comes out to is also the same pattern that it blinks in ones and zeros. So if you hit LT and RT with the left star and the right star, you're going to hit the same thing anyway, which is really fucking crazy. The chances of that are not exactly huge. Maybe it was intentional. I don't know. So then you get to the last one, and the last one blows. So, if you've looked at FEZ, you probably know the black monolith, right? Does anybody know about the monolith? First of all, I put in black monolith because I wanted to get these images. Tell them about the monolith in your words. So I can have some water.
The only thing that hasn't been solved without breaking the code.
Yep.
And I'm not sure if we really solved that.
I'll tell you how it happens.
Okay, yeah.
So the code for this motherfucker is actually 2 codes. Whoop-de-doo. So in the game, you're going to find an artifact that's a map. Let's look at the FEZ map and hope that I didn't get the stupid one.
There should be 9.
Thank you. Okay, so in the game, the little piece of paper is all you get to look at. And it's got a Tetramino code on it, and I didn't talk too much because I don't think I really want to spoil it for the people who don't know. But essentially, you have to input some code based on these patterns in order to unlock a cube. Well, in this particular room, all you've got to go on when you come in here is this ridiculous shape on the ground and this intimidating black box, which, good thing Google has a lot of pictures of it because it was that fucking frustrating. And then this was like the most miraculous moment ever. So you come in this room and you find this torn thing, and what we're basically telling you is there is no answer. If you go back to the tome, which has been the only reference literally in the game that links to these puzzles, you get the one about the name of God, which is Metatron. That's how that trails out if you do the sacred geometry thing. A pattern, a code, that's obviously the binary code in the stars. It says a gate to the stars. A deep understanding is a deep understanding of code and numbers. All of time and space and the fucking space outside of space, where does it end? Well, the game is meta, right? And the game, he knows fundamentally that you're going to go outside of the game to get the answers. He also knows that he didn't need to tell you the answer. And this is the best part. So what happened, I want to say historically, but that sounds super douchey. What happened when it came out was somebody did, in fact, leak the code. But only a few people knew about it. Like, fortunately, it didn't get super public. Like, you saw that a few people had figured it out and saw, like, the percentage in the leaderboard or whatever. But for the most part, it was really unclear what the code was. The only way it was ultimately solved was somebody built a nice little web app where you would put in the code in your thing and say, yes or no, that worked. And it would feed you codes. And it would feed each code that it came up with randomly, like at least 2 times to get the confidence that somebody just fuck it up. And then the code was found. That's a really shitty way to figure something out in a game.
This is a code for like typing and controlling.
Yes. This is one of these guys. And the code it actually is right there, but if you don't... Yeah, exactly. But then something really fucking frustrating happens. You keep playing FEZ, and you think, okay, well maybe, the code is just something we were supposed to go and ask, and supposed to brute force, or supposed to hack out. But then you've got the game, like, feeding you a lot of shit that doesn't make sense. And I'm not joking. So you start in this room, and you see I guess there are 3 squares. Concentric circles, but they're squares because we're in a 2D pixel game, I guess. Those are littered throughout the game on posters, and somehow, some have a lot, some have a few. They go up to 13, and they're just posters. And then one day you land, and you use your cool little glasses, and you get these crop circles. And that's lovely. We're going to go into the deep part of the internet here. Thank you for Google searching with me. This is fun. This is where it starts, you guys. Oh, this is shit. Okay. Thanks, internet. I probably have it. I'm just being lazy. So you find these shapes on the ground. I've literally got them laid out here. And I literally mean this word. You took so much of my life, you bastards. So there's these shapes on the ground. And they've got concentric squares, and they've got little dots on them. Nobody knows what the fuck this is. Nobody knows why it's in the game. And it's been alluded to that they're actually quite important. Okay, but wait a minute. We've done the game. We've done the 3 hearts. We figured it out, right? Okay, well then the soundtrack comes out, and then some brilliant man is like, oh, let's see what the spectrographs are like. And then they find these images in the soundtrack. And what the fuck is this?
At least that's the spectrogram of the sound.
Yeah. If you put it through like frequency analysis and you...
Including all the text.
the text is just kind of figuring out what they all mean or they're referencing. Yeah. Yeah, but before, like when we first saw this, you're seeing this image, and like there's one that looks like some Freemasons. You've got obviously the crucifix of Christ and the tetrahedron there, and then you've got all these dates in the middle. You got the fucking smiley face, all these things. This is the soundtrack. This is literally if you get the soundtrack and open it. Yes. Yes, absolutely. OG, like this thing, beautiful thing. Yeah, awesome, sweet, brand new. So. The thing I'm playing right now, you're being subliminally in this imagery, I guess. Yeah, it's all time, but I mean, who skips in the FEZ soundtrack? Does anybody skip in the FEZ soundtrack? No. Fucking weirdo.
I'm just saying, like, if you can process information that goes at such a...
Who knows what your brain's doing? I don't fucking know. Okay.
I'm just trying to provide a valuable counterpoint.
Okay. Yeah. So, why the fuck does the game get solved and finished, and then we get these hilarious comments from Phil Fish on Twitter like, you guys haven't even done half the game. You guys don't even know shit. The thing is about FEZ, I think maybe there's more. Maybe there's actually more of a game in there, and I think that's what like our hearts would really want is like fanboys. Maybe there's a more game to the game, like Final Fantasy VII the remake. But I think the problem there, and this is what Phil is trying to say, it's expectation. And that's what you come into FEZ with, I think, naturally, especially with all the hype that was built around it. You have an expectation of an experience, and then FEZ just makes its own fucking rules. And FEZ makes you play a game in a way you probably haven't played a game before. There's puzzles where you literally have to go either be really patient or change your system clock to get something in-game to do something you want. There are situations where you literally, if you don't have a notebook out and you're not taking notes, you're just not going to be able to do it. There's things like this list of interesting numbers that go vertically that also have seemingly no purpose, but if you go and ask somebody who worked on the game, they say, oh, that actually matters, you just don't know what it is. So there's still, even in the outside universe of the game, there's still this information that implies that perhaps there's more. And then every once in a while, somebody on the development team will give you a breadcrumb. They'll say, well, what about that chart of the hexahedron that you didn't look at? Or what about the squares? Or maybe those things are actually numbers if you take them into a graph, because they actually end up mapping into numbers, even though they're all tetraminos. It's like the maddest fucking thing when you go deep into FEZ. And just so deep. I have all these memories of like just pulling out assets and working with the guys like this that are just able to see the underbones and try to figure out what everything is. I lost a lot of free time doing this. Did anybody else go this deep? You sound like maybe the only one.
I got close. I made notebooks, but you were starting to hit some stuff that I never done. It's like
Yeah.
once I got to the monolith, I got really, really frustrated. So
It can be frustrating for sure.
I kind of was like, oh, this is becoming like I'd already I'm around 200 hours into this.
Jeez, yeah.
Until I got to like the monolith part, and because I was trying to avoid the internet as much as possible, so I figured out the language myself.
Nice.
A few things.
That's impressive.
Myself. And then I gave up when I got to the monolith, and I was just like, okay, fuck it. It's been 3 months. I need to see what the internet says about this, and it was no help.
No help. That sucks. But that's really fucking impressive you got that far. Yeah, it's disappointing. But I invite you to maybe open your mind to maybe there's more there. And this is where I'm going to go a little bit haywire. So they do the code, you put the code in, you get the third cube, and then you go into the room, and you got 3 little cubes, and you get another reboot just like the last one, and then you start the game over again with a new game plus, and that's your fulfillment. The same damn thing you did the last time, that's all you got, the same copy. And the bonus of some 3D mode where you can get the blue and red glasses and you can actually look at it and see like real 3D and kind of turn your head and get some glimpse, but it's not, obviously it's not hot shit. It's not like going to Fun. So then there's stuff like this in FEZ. And if you played FEZ, just like maybe you would play Myst or Riven, you understand that the story and the backstory and the mythology of the people, of the environment, all of that really matters. And this is interesting because if you look at FEZ's character, if you look at this girl or you look at Gomez, who's the playable character, or anybody you interact with in the home, the adventure homeland, where you start the game, they've all got little squished heads. But then you go to a place later in the game where you actually go to a time gate and you get to see kind of a parallel universe. And you find these people with really big, tall heads, and they wear fezzes. Let me just do, let's try Fez Majesty. Wow, just soundtrack shit. That's cool. So they're the same people, but they have big heads. I'm just going to scroll really fast because it's just going to be in here somewhere. And they're all wearing fezzes, and they talk in the Fez language. Everybody where you start the game speaks in English, but these people don't. Lots of notes, guys. I'm going to stop looking. But they have tall heads, and they wear fezzes, and they speak in the Fezzish language. And it's almost a prelude to, like, did anybody play Chrono Trigger? There was a really magical moment for me in Chrono Trigger when you're going through time. And Chrono Trigger is kind of a similar game in that you're going through different time eras. And actually what's cool about Chrono Trigger is when you make an action in the past, it affects the future in really big, awesome ways. And that's the beauty of Chrono Trigger. If you ever hear somebody like kind of like fanboying about it, that's why, probably. In FEZ, it's the same concept without all the cool interaction, but you can go into the future or the parallel, whatever it is, and see this really sophisticated race. They built like a time travel machine. They've got a huge Stargate. It's really impressive culture compared to everything you've experienced here. But here's what's interesting. You think about these people and they seem all futuristic. And just like in Chrono Trigger, you have a race of people that are actually in the far, far past, but they look like they're hyper scientific, but in reality, they're just like mystical. They're really just using kind of like some sort of the Force. I think it's called the Force. And they've got these are the people in the pictures, and that's why it's kind of jumbling around. They've got big heads like these guys, and here's what's cute. This picture comes from a door in the place you start, which means that those people with big heads and hats, they were in the past. They had to have been. And something happened to them, which is in direct contradiction with what they're being taught. Does anybody feel like there's maybe some cool parallel with this language and the world we all grew up in that's a little disturbing? Here's what I think about FEZ, and this is where it gets pretty crazy. I feel like FEZ is not only a commentary on the gaming experience and what it means to have, living in the moment. You play FEZ and you need to live in the moment. You need to reference your notes, but if you're not attentive to the details in the now, you're not going to succeed at FEZ. You can't just think it's some game where you're playing. You have to do all this shit. You have to look at the walls. You have to go in. You have to dig. FEZ forces you to do that if you're going to finish it. And that, in and of itself, is where things get really radical, because this is sort of the spiritual message that we're kind of being taught by Hollywood and other things. And literally, it's Star Wars. I think the best thing I can do is reference Star Wars, because they're trying to teach you that we are all one. We are all connected, right? There is some energy that binds us. We literally must have been the same fucking stardust that exploded into whatever the hell we are now, right? And then we're also now learning that we're mostly empty space. How do you guys feel about that shit? You guys all know what I'm talking about with like quantum physics, and it's like, hey, all these things that make my skin, they're actually molecules that are really quite afraid of each other, but they hang out, just like good friends at a party. Can't be too close, but close enough to get fucked up.
Actually, when I was playing this, I was also getting really big into like watching Carl Sagan's Cosmos.
Awesome, yeah, it's perfect.
And it just happened to just be around the same time.
It's perfect.
So, like the Tesseract episode specifically
Yep.
was very intriguing as I was going back and forth between the two and kind of starting to understand the game more because
Yeah.
of my external watching habits.
Absolutely.
So
Who saw Interstellar? Because that's kind of like right there too. Interstellar at the end, like the whole idea is the event that happened that triggered him to have his life happened in the future that he made happen because of his past. And like, I'm an engineer, and for me, that's just fucking bullshit. Like, I want to say no. But who the fuck really knows, right? We live and we have these experiences and we try to interact with each other through time, But how many times literally have you guys felt like you just had a drive to do something, an intuition, something your heart said, I've got to do, even if your head was like, don't do that? You guys have those moments? I know that we all have those moments, and if you say no, you're a fucking liar.
It's interesting to hear you come from a spiritual angle for me at this point, because I've got some stuff to talk about.
I would love to have a conversation, and you should go deep. If you want to go deep with me, we can go deep together. Because I took FEZ apart, and then I started to learn about sacred geometry. I started to learn about what this message was, what really is behind FEZ. The word is simple. It's one word answer to what is FEZ. It's unity, and it's probably its parallel that's unmisspoken is love. Love and unity are the same thing. Does anybody have an argument against that? So you play FEZ, and in the end, you build a heart. The name of the piece in the soundtrack that plays is called Love. And the entire time, your journey is to learn how all of the different time eras that you're playing in are actually connected. And I think when you want to solve a problem like what are these squares, what you're actually learning is that these aren't separate entities. The game is making a very strong reference to time travel the whole time, obviously, and it's a very key component of what it is. You'll literally see these statues and totems that you see them kind of evolve into the shape of what Gomez looks like. And they follow roughly the pattern of these shapes. But now what's really interesting is I talked to you guys about how the really crazy mystical people with all the powers, they're actually in the past. And you see that because they have the hats. Well, what also happens is the place with the futuristic people has this. But the place you start has this. But the place you start is after the beginning. And this is a clear reference to time. This is a clear reference to visitations of a same location. They're all very similar in the game. It is the kind of the tying factor to say the location you're here now is also this location in another place. There's a heavy emphasis on it. But then there's all those fucking dots, and I don't even know what to say about them because nobody knows. We try to do a lot to figure it out, and really just nobody knows. But FEZ is about unity and love. And I think if I were Phil Fish and I were to make this game and try to have a message that is this deep and really point people at things like sacred geometry, love and spirituality, literally call things unity and love in the game, have such emphasis and all this language and this tome that is literally trying to like shove down your throat. Everything's the same, you guys. We should just accept each other. Live in the now when you play this game. Stop thinking about your expectations. I'd be really upset because of all the hate and the blah, blah, blah that I'm sure we're all aware of that Phil Fish got for making this game, or the consequences of it happening, and also him being kind of outrageous. Because I feel like if I were to put 5 years into something and have that reaction, I'd just say, fuck it, right? Just fuck it. Nobody got it. I'm so pissed off. And I think that's probably something that affected him. So the monolith... Right? Well, you can see a few email exchanges where they talk about some things, and he called it the meta bullshit early on, like because Phil Fish is probably as self-destructive as the rest of us. It's just really powerful when I play this game and I have these kind of connections to these deeper ideas because I know it's in there. I know there's something more to this game, and I refuse to think it has to be something that's like physical or actually in the game. There's probably another game in there, but there's clearly imagery and stuff that hasn't been discovered. This game is more than a game easily, and when you do get into the spiritual stuff, if you feel like that's something worth exploring, which I absolutely think it is because it just pulls you in, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm going to change my belief system, or oh, I'm going to be religious one day. It's really, oh, what I'm going to do is start analyzing how I live my life. I'm going to start analyzing the fact that when people talk to me, they're experiences that aren't supposed to have reactions, but are supposed to have responses. Because if you react to things in FEZ, you ain't going to get shit. You can't react to anything. It doesn't matter. It's like the most passive game ever. There's no reaction allowed, almost, except for a few places where you've got some pressure and you've got a time chase up a lava maze, Super Metroid style. But like, other than that, this game is very much like, just touch me, just feel me, just kind of do things you don't feel are right. I think that's what inspired me having access to like all this like crazy, all the assets. So this is just half of the shit I got into. But you can take everything in FEZ and unwind it. And there's probably, for every one crazy thing I talked about that you guys weren't aware of, even the people that beat the game, there's at least 5 other things I didn't talk about. So this game is fucking crazy. And there's clearly more to it. And there's a big spiritual component. And I'm literally in the process of writing an essay about this. I don't know if it's worth anybody's reading. but by the time I'm done with it, my goal is to kind of show and really emphasize the different eras that are in this game, how they are the same era, and how it's really all cyclical, how our lives on Earth are very much this story, forcibly. This is the hero's journey, repeated in imagery over and over again if you get into the lore of these eras and what happened to these people by experiencing the game and diving deep. These are literally ruins. This game is more than a game. We have any talking points you guys want to have now that I've rambled for 50 minutes about FEZ? Sure.
How do you feel about not the cancellation, but the game in general of FEZ 2?
Let's watch a FEZ 2 trailer.
I haven't seen this one, so I'm
It's just like not knowing the details of that. How could you have a sequel to this?
Let's just watch the FEZ 2 trailer. Are we gonna get sound? I need sound. So this trailer is really interesting, and I guess I'll just talk over it. FEZ 2, the story here is this was announced and canceled. How do I feel about it? I have no idea how I feel about it. I feel like it's either literally a game that he wanted to make and then had canceled, or everything encoded in that one little pixel line has meaning. And if there are people on Reddit, of course it's the place to be, have taken that and literally seen numeric patterns where those things that you just witnessed are just prime numbers aligned in a certain way. And prime numbers, if you guys are familiar, are really important with cryptography. And FEZ is also full of cryptography, which is crazy. A lot of the puzzles literally have to be approached in the same way you would approach, hacking a Russian code, literally. So I would just say I feel good about it. Phil Fish's avatar, just for reference, is I don't know the name of the dude, but it's a comedian who faked his death and then 40 years came back and blew everyone's mind because he was alive, and then he was also suddenly the best comedian ever for a time.
Wow, it's Dangerfield.
Same idea. So, yeah, who knows what he's gonna do? Who knows what the fuck that is? Who knows what FEZ is? FEZ very much feels unfinished, and a lot of those things that people and myself would say, oh, it's all this stuff and things. Perhaps it's just bullshit he wanted to make, and it was really awesome. He wanted to expand it and said, fuck it, I'm done with this game. I don't know. You guys just wasted 54 minutes of your life.
I've always been curious of whether or not there was ever really a FEZ 2, and that was just more like the key to the monolith.
Who knows?
So
I don't.
That was always been one.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm sure that's someone else's thoughts too.
there are a lot of people that link a lot of things. I literally have this shared on Reddit, and I get comments on it. I have people that email me, and they're like, what do you think this means? And I'm like, God, shut up. I don't know. I want a divorce from this game, but every time I get an email, somebody sends me shit like this, and they're like, but what about all these posters and all these things that literally are connected, and here are the squares, and here's, by the way, I broke down the different color masks, and why are they red, green, and blue? And you're like, okay, who cares? It just is. Who needs it? At the same time, though, there's just some shit, and those squares are something else, man. I don't know what it is. Nobody does.
The whole unfinished squares.
Yeah. There's this fucking thing, and you can see somebody's notes down there, and then you can literally break this up into numbers and try to read it and see if there's patterns, but no one has the time to do the whole cryptography thing and really figure it out. And by the way, if I were going to answer the question about what that shape at the beginning was, this thing on the far left there that we saw on the poster and is in a few other places, there's also a totem that looks like this that represents the most ancient culture in the game. And I'll just leave it there. I have no idea. I've thought really hard about it, but I have nothing conclusive. Who are you? Do you have something conclusive to say?
I could possibly comment.
Comment, please.
Okay.
You've been in the depths. You're just gonna say okay?
Yes. Yeah,
He's under an NDA. I really don't think he can talk about it, literally. But I think that if we could get him really drunk, we could probably figure it out.
Damn.
So yeah, there's a lot to FEZ. Yeah.
I wonder if one of the lessons is to
You have to let go? Yeah, I like that. That's very much probably a thing. I didn't take that advice. Not very well, anyway. Yeah.
Most of the game does not take that hint.
Yeah. No, we didn't. It's literally just trying to solve patterns all the time, and it's a disease, and maybe I probably have it. God, there's so much shit. Any other questions on FEZ? More than a game? Yeah. Taking the time and absolutely. I mean, for me, space outside of space can be like the menu, it could be meta, it could be in the code, it could be, like you're saying, the 3D glasses. And the 3D glasses, like literally, if you're going to take the time to see every room, that's something that would be embedded into the game data in a way that you couldn't see without the glasses in your eyes. So it's perfectly reasonable to think there's more there. And I don't know. I wish I knew, but I just, that's, hey, I let go there. I'm not going to go into every single room in the game and put 3D glasses on and check it out. As much as I really kind of wanted to. I'll be honest. I literally, so I couldn't find 3D glasses. I live on Haight Street in San Francisco. We couldn't find 3D glasses anywhere in the city. So I ultimately found them in a hipster sock shop where the socks had like a 3D skull knitted into them, and they came with 3D glasses. I was like, oh, sweet, FEZ. So I bought those socks to get the glasses. I wish I had the socks. But yeah. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to me ramble about this video game. I hope you can take something away from it. I hope that if you haven't played FEZ, maybe that you might want to dive in a little more, or if you only got halfway through, you might want to play a little more. Or maybe I scared you away from the game forever. Thank you. I hope that's the effect I had. So the last thing I'll conclude on, I did have the privilege of working on the FEZ remix albums with Rich and a bunch of other really talented people. And we took the song, or the tome that I showed you and wrote lyrics and made up things. I literally called it weird. In my credit, it was weird. So I'll leave this, we'll listen to it. Thank you guys so much again for coming. This was fun. I love talking about FEZ. It's kind of pornographic to me, so let's do it again. Thank you.